So I've spent the afternoon kind of like looking through all your guys' stuff. And one thing that we talked about when we talked about doing this initially, I was like, let's like talk about like, like we'll talk about you guys as a band, but I also want to hear about where like you as a musician as well. Because obviously, when you're in a band and especially like with your family like type of atmosphere, uh it really puts you guys as a unit, which is amazing, but also like you guys are also individual artists. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about like just you as a singer, and just just like I said, just as a musician in general. So obviously I looked into your bio, but I would like to get into stuff that like people just can't like find online. Um, so can you tell me more about like you and like when you started singing?
Yeah. So, let's see, when I started singing, I guess I started singing like formally when I was in middle school.
Okay.
Um, the school system that I was in had very specific, had very deliberate music programs.
Mhm.
And it was a requirement from, I mean, in elementary school, but from sixth grade on and to eighth grade, you were required to choose a music class. And then, and so that's kind of how it started. And I did play like musicals, I did the school plays.
Mm.
But then when I got to high school, I kind of had it in my head that you had to choose, like, you're either a jock or you're a theater person or you're a,
Mhm.
whatever. And I gravitated towards sports because that was where my friends were going, and that's kind of where the opportunities were. And I will say I wasn't as confident in my like musical abilities, so I just didn't pursue that. Um, but then but my senior year, there was a community theater that was putting on High School Musical, and
Oh, God bless. That's amazing.
and that was just kind of like I don't know, that's how I kind of got back into it. Um, I auditioned, and I had like probably one of the best experiences ever. It still sticks with me, and that was like over 10 years ago.
Yeah, what did your role end up being?
I just ended up being one of the skater kids.
Oh my gosh, because like your voice, like I thought when you said High School Musical, I knew for a fact you were Gabriella. I just knew,
No,
like,
no, I
be-
was way, 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 way less confident, and my abilities were not fully formed. I just didn't. I mean, I loved to sing, I loved to perform, but I wasn't as prolific in like vocals at the time. Uh,
Mm,
and so, and that again, that was kind of like um, the one shining moment in a while. And so, I actually got into dance and cheer when I went to college because that was, I mean, I was just really athletic at the time, and so that was what I ended up doing in terms of performance. But I've always been performing for some reason or another, and I even think like right now I'm currently a teacher, and I feel like I'm performing. So my life is
right.
literally a stage.
Absolutely. What grade?
I teach sixth grade.
Yeah,
Um,
yep.
yeah, and it's currently I'm in special education, so I'm working with students that are that get support in reading, and that's what I do right now is work with them in their English and reading and developing those skills with them. And so, and I actually really enjoy it. It wasn't my initial path. I actually probably didn't figure out my path until like a month ago. So,
Man, yep. Absolutely. That must be tough right now with everything that's going on. Cause like when you start getting connected to especially kids, you like really miss seeing them. So like that must be really tough right now.
yeah, I think though that it's given me the opportunity to see what it is I actually want to do and what I really enjoy.
Yeah.
while I do enjoy teaching and I really enjoy, actually, I love writing things and filling out forms and stuff. So I really enjoy the curriculum side of things. And so for me, it's been translating that into into this sphere, into like the music industry and entertainment and events, um, to make that more of my career forever, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking about, and like me and all my friends have been talking about, like,
Mhm.
as scary and unpredictable this whole situation is, it feels like, there's been a positive, whereas like everybody is really able to like refocus and figure out like, okay, what do I really want out of life?
Mhm.
And so like that's awesome. So I also wanted to ask, like, obviously don't get too into it if you don't want to, but like, what is it like? Because even just me like doing any like business stuff that I have and like asking my mom, like working with your family is just, what it is. So how does that like translate to you guys? Like, because I couldn't have, because like, even just like me trying to like translate like my musical ideas to like my bandmates, like the idea of like trying to explain something to like my family, oof. So how's that for you?
Totally, totally. I get that. In the beginning, it was really hard. Um, Not only did we have the five of us, but my brother and I are both married. And in the middle of that, also, I had my daughter, and then we have our parents. And then because we are a close knit family, there were even extended family members who were trying to give us their input, which
Of
was
course.
lovingly appreciated.
Of course.
And I think what it really came down to was we realized two things: that it's okay for us to have differing opinions, and also that there were going to be trade-offs,
Mm,
or that there were going to be situations in which someone was not going to be happy, or they weren't going to feel like they got what they want. Like, there was a lot of compromise to it, I think, in the real total sense of the word. So for me, it kind of, once we got to that point of like, we're either we're a team or we're not, because there was a point where we weren't going to move forward as we are as a band.
mm,
um there were probably a couple points
all
actually.
right.
But I think it was having those hard conversations and making sure everyone had the opportunity to say, this is how I feel and this is what I want. And then either saying that's realistic, or and we can accommodate for that, or maybe we can't, and you have to decide for yourself if that was a deal breaker. So it had a lot to do with I working with that individuality,
Hmm.
and also just kind of going with the flow. I don't know if you can tell, like, my daughter's in the background like singing, and
you
and so
know,
you kind of have to take it with, like, in stride. Like, you just recognize that family is family and music is music, and or business is business, and at the end of the day, the business and the music are not going to change how we feel about each other. So
absolutely. Yeah. And that's super important, especially when, you're in a family oriented band as opposed to like just a band, because it's like, eh, even if somebody leaves the band, that's still your sister. So
right, right. And we had, a couple of come to Jesus situations where it was like, yeah, you're still, we had to be able to separate that. And at first it wasn't easy, because when we were younger, we were all, um, with, as the majority of the kids were like younger and, in elementary and middle school. And then it was kind of like, well, we'll just kind of see where this goes. But then as we decided to be more professional, more real about what we were doing, and then you added into it like, okay, well, my wife would like it if I made a little bit of extra money, or my husband would like
hmm.
it if I was more available, or those kinds of things, that those demands. And then the kids kind of grew up, and that's when we all were like, okay, we've got five completely different personalities, 5 completely different paths, 5 completely different goals. How are we going to manage all of that? So, and I look back at, like, the family bands that we, know of from the past, like the Jacksons or the Osmonds, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a lot of internal struggle because they had completely different ideas on what they wanted. And then, some of them have been burned in the fallout. And we've just been really blessed to not have that yet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And when you mentioned before, like, you had kind of like separating the like like the family of it all, and then like the professionalism of it all. That's the one thing that like kind of seems to be a like theme throughout everything that I seen you guys. I watched like all the interviews and stuff on YouTube, and like, yeah, like the professionalism, like I'm impressed at how, and I hate to use the word impressed because that kind of makes me seem like I am in a position to be impressed by something. Anyway, um, but no, like it's like super amazing to like look at like you guys, like knowing you guys are siblings, and like to be able to like just talk about the music as the music and not about like everything else and like the fight that you might have had that morning, whatever. Like that
But
honestly,
that's the real part. Like, you're
yeah.
absolutely right in that, when we're on, we're on, and again, it doesn't change how we feel about each other or how we feel about the music, but we just know that of all the things that we ever wanted to accomplish with QOK or Queens Over Kings, was that we wanted people to see that, yeah, if family can be tough, but it also is just a lot of fun and it's worth it. And we want people to feel good. And, people don't feel good if you're up there and you don't feel good. So
Absolutely.
trying to
Absolutely.
portray that for other people was always a priority.
So are you guys super like different? Like you guys like super differing ages? Like
Yeah. So it starts with me. I'm 31, I think.
right?
I might
You
be
gotta lose
32.
count after like 21. I get you. I understand.
And then I have the brother that's after me is 2 years younger, and then there's a 7-year gap between him and the next brother,
Okay.
and then 2 years or 3-ish years between him and the sister, and then 2 years between the last two. So overall, there's a 14-year span
Yeah.
between us all. And I mean, it is a big difference, but we, I mean, we have things in common. Like, I mean, we have our parents.
Right,
and,
obviously.
and I mean, and that's, and those, the values and the culture that we have at home, that's something that we all share. But when you look at us individually, we really are completely different people, and we're in different stages of our lives, and we have different interests and all of that. So, but I think that that's what helps drive our music, is that
Yes.
when someone sits down and says, "Hey, I've got, a line or a melody, or I've been working on this sound," and when we sit down together and we start writing together, it comes from everywhere. It's never one person, um, and that's really important, because when you listen to the music, it's not any one thing, especially on our EP that's out.
Right.
It's like every song is a completely different song, but we are proud of that, because it totally represents how, whether it be from our influences or our personal experiences, just how we are putting all of that together.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it says a lot because there's 5 of you in the band.
Hmm.
There is 5 songs on the EP. They all
Yeah.
sound different. So it all kinda, like, goes into each other, which is pretty cool. I like that. So I wanted to ask, uh, so what is your guys' culture at home?
It's funny because I was just talking to my mom about this yesterday. There has always been this, like, you're a Roberts
Okay.
mentality in our home, and a lot of that is based on, heritage,
Mhm.
in turn, because my dad is Black, my mom is white and Panamanian. So we're mixed kids. And
I'm Panamanian.
oh,
That's awesome.
oh my gosh, that's great. So like, so culture in terms of like heritage, that's a big part of that. And then we are regular God-fearing church-going people. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's always been a big part of our lives. Music has always been part of our lives. And so that whole concept of like, you are a Roberts and that is your identity is I would say that just is the culture.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's awesome.
and that's not to say that there aren't, the valleys as well as the
Of
mountains,
course.
but just saying that or looking in the mirror and saying like, I'm a Roberts, and that's that. Even if that's all I can think of today, that's enough. And I think that's what makes it easy for us to be so close.
Mm-hmm. And when you say that, it really resonates with me, because that's exactly how my family is. You know, you don't have this like you don't identify as, your skin color or your culture.
Hmm.
You identify as you are you. And,
Hmm.
you're where you grew up, you're where you came from. And it doesn't really have a lot to do with the, um, just the surface stuff. It's about everything
Right.
that's inside. So yeah, I would definitely resonate with that. That's awesome.
And
That's
I completely
awesome.
appreciate where you said like, it's not just about skin color, or it is a combination of all of those things. It's a combination of that we have lived here for a really long time, and that that's a big part of our family culture too, because it was a big deal that we moved to this area for my
Mhm.
family. um, and things like my brother and we're first generation college students and graduates, and so like that's a big deal. And like just recognizing that like we have come so far, and that all of those little pieces are what make up our family and our family culture.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's so awesome. So I wanted to go into more about what your goals are, as in terms of like you were talking about, getting into like the more entertainment and music industry side of things, the event industry. So what are you doing with that?
So last year we opened a recording studio,
Mhm.
and that was probably a long time coming. We have been performing and recording for over about 10 years, and it just made sense for us to move on and open our own studio.
Right.
Because as we were all growing up and realizing there were different things about the music that we enjoyed most, um, the recording studio really gives us that opportunity to pursue whatever it is, little things that we want to pursue. Uh,
Mhm.
and so that's been like awesome. We have really solidified what we're doing, and what services we offer, and what relationships that we want to build. And I'm so incredibly proud of how far that has come in such a short time. Um, we were walking through the other day, and we would go every now and then, and just thinking about like the late nights that we stayed up because we painted it all ourselves,
Mhm.
or the the fact that it used to have like all these random holes in the wall from when it used to be a data center, the spaces that we have. And
Oh,
so
okay.
little things like that just, and now, I mean, when we look at the photography that we've had done so we can, put it up on our website and everything, it's just like, wow, I can't believe that is what we've created. It's fantastic. The other thing is, my mom, who's generally my business partner, um,
Mhm.
she and I have an events business that we had started a couple years ago, originally as like a pop-up kind of thing, and we were utilizing the relationships that we had in the industry with the musicians in the area, and we really wanted to promote the artists that we knew that were here, in Loudoun County. And that worked out really well. We had a lot of opportunities to share music with people in really random places. Like we had a Beatles night in a sushi bar. Like
That's awesome.
it was really cool. It was really fun. But with with all the impact of COVID, it just has changed kind of our business a lot, because we were doing in-person events, and now we really can't.
Right.
So right now we're just trying to keep those creative juices flowing and figuring out how we can still implement what it is, the goal, the vision that we had of being of being the ferryman, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
of the music and the artists and the creative culture that's right here in our backyard, for people. So we're working on building some online and virtual things that
Mm-hmm.
allow us to still share that with people while distancing and keeping ourselves all safe and healthy and all of that. So everything relies on COVID right now.
Right. No, but that's absolutely incredible, because I think that everybody, who's a musician and an artist kind of like thinks about, okay, what happens after I put out my last album? Not that I necessarily want to get away from music, but what happens when I don't want to be on the stage anymore, you know? So
Right.
I think that every artist has like bowled over the idea of opening a recording studio and getting into the events and everything. But I think that while you guys are kind of still in the thick of it, having just won like best band of 2020, which is awesome. And
Yeah.
that's
Without even
incredible.
trying.
Right. Um, but I mean, it's well deserved. Like if you look at everything that you guys have put out, and again, just the professionalism of it all, like I mean, like I said, it's well deserved. So, um, just yeah, you guys are just kind of doing it all and taking it very seriously, and that's more than can be said of a lot of people, and that's not a knock on anyone. Everybody
Sure.
has their own level of commitment and desire to go
Mhm.
whatever, but you you guys show that level of professionalism and commitment, um whatever that means to you guys individually, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I think
Um
a lot of that comes from very early on. We realized that there were just going to be multiple ways that we could accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, because we all said at the beginning we wanted to make careers out of music. But one of the things we've learned, or what we've learned most over the years, is that could mean so many different things.
Absolutely.
And that's an important part of um, the music industry, especially now as we're all trying to adapt. We that whole concept of the getting picked up by the record label executive who just happens to be in town and was at
Mhm.
the random bar that you were playing at, and they really like your music and you're signed the next day. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
Mhm.
There's and then even, I would say, even like the YouTube stars that end up making it, like Justin Bieber or whatever, however he got to be where he was, or that even, I would say, is a saturated platform. So figuring out your space within the industry, if that's what you really want to do, is so important. I mean, I know a guy, he's down in Nashville, but and he does music for a living, but it's not like he doesn't necessarily play around down there at like restaurant stuff, but he actually is part of an orchestra that records music for video games. So
Oh, that's
like,
incredible. I love
isn't
video
that so
games.
cool? I mean, so like there's just so many different ways to do what it is that you want to do, if music is that thing. So, and we're just all gonna have, like you said, just adapting to these changes and realizing that music may not be the same
Mhm.
after all of this, and that's okay, that we as creative people can transition, can move forward with it.
Yeah, because that was definitely one thing that I was telling one of my friends who used to be in radio and is kind of finding his place, and he's like, I'm not really sure where what niche, I don't,
Mhm.
how do you even say that word? What,
Either way, I've looked
right?
at it. It can go both ways.
Which thing, like where I fall in,
Mhm.
in the Spotify, the YouTube,
Mhm.
the whatever. And I'm like, do you know what? You don't pick a niche. You make your own and then you
Yeah.
dominate that.
Do you? And that's the ultimate do you. I mean,
Yeah.
if you feel like you just want to write, I mean, we're working with a guy at the studio who he like what he does is he writes parody music. That's what he does. He just writes parodies. Um, and we're working with him in distribution, and we're just putting his music in places where parodies are, are useful. My mom's a genius with this stuff, but she found an online, I think, history curriculum that was looking for examples of music to represent the Great Depression, and one of the songs
Mm,
he had given us was a song about unemployment. And so, I mean, she submitted to that, and it's like you once you find your thing, it just lays itself out for you
absolutely.
if you're committed to it,
Absolutely.
if you're dedicated to it. So,
I think that, you know, I think a lot of us are kind of realizing that, in this time when you just kind of like pick something
mhm,
and you just go for it,
mhm.
it just things just roll, like the red carpet is just rolled out and you're like, "Oh, so it was that easy? Okay."
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Exactly. It's like, oh wait, I just had to actually do it, and it would be okay.
right. It's insane.
Yes.
But no, that's totally awesome. So you mentioned before, hearing the music. It sounded like you guys have other stuff in the works aside from the EP that you have out.
Yeah. So that EP was like, oh gosh, forever in the making.
Mhm,
Because they were five completely different songs. They came from five completely different places. We worked with at least two producers on it. Um, so that was that was the learning process, I should say, for us
mhm,
going through all of that. We're working on a new song, a new single right now, and we're looking at um, doing some music videos for the songs on the EP as well. But really, in terms of music and creative projects down the road, it's more like the boys have music. They're very independent with that.
mhm,
Gerald is a he's a producer and he writes his own stuff. And Lauren's in school for production and engineering, so he's that's kind of his focus. So he's writing music too. Uh,
mhm.
but in terms like for me, I haven't really. I admit that I just kind of wait until they come to me and say I've got this riff.
Right.
And then I pull out my notebook and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this line sounds good,
Right.
and start writing a melody. So, as in terms of like new stuff, we are very what's the word? Dedicated to the muse, I guess. When she decides to show up, she shows
Mhm.
up, and we work with it. And then when she's gone, she's gone.
I feel that, yep.
So we
And
just
sometimes she shows up at times where you're just not ready. It's just
oh
3
my
AM,
gosh,
and you're like,
yes,
"Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm
yes.
writing this song now." Like
And there have been some very distinct nights where I've said, "Nah, I'll remember it in the morning," but when I wake up, it's gone. And
Yep.
I've definitely learned my lesson on that one. But I mean, it really is about the studio right now in terms of moving forward. We are utilizing the studio to record this single, so
Mhm.
that gives us a chance to get back in the swing of things there. But yeah, that's kind of in terms of creative projects where we're going as a band right now.
Okay. That's awesome. And that's awesome that you guys kinda get to, like, now you don't have to work under the time of, whatever studio slot you have. You can just
Yeah.
kinda, like, when you're ready and when nobody else is there, you could just take as much time as you need.
That's the great part of it. I mean, of course, we want to see more musicians in there. We want to we want to expand our community in there. But it is nice to be able to say, you know what, let's go to the studio today and lay down those drums, or let's get into the studio and work on those harmonies. It's, I don't know, I don't know if there are really any words to describe it. It's magical,
Mhm.
to be able to I guess, live your dream. Like, and I think that's what I was trying to get at when I was saying, looking back a year ago at what that space looked like and how it looks now, just didn't think it would actually, or didn't know what I would do when it actually happened.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's how songwriting feels like too. You just
Mm,
like have a thought in your head, and then all of a sudden it's a song, and you're like,
right.
whether it's your favorite song or not, it's
Yeah.
still like incredible to see it all come together.
Hmm.
And you compare it to like how you heard it in your head, and a lot of times how like you couldn't even have imagined like the way it turned out. So like, but I think that's just songwriting, even like I guess interior design. I don't know, but like even just like any kind of creative process feels like magic because you just can't you can never completely envision exactly what the final product is going to look like, and you're
Exactly.
always just as surprised as anybody
Yep.
else who's seeing it.
Yep. But that I think is what we're always chasing,
Mhm.
is what it looks like in the end. Because, again, as creative people, we can see it. I can see it in my head, what it is that I'm trying to do. But then when it comes out, it's like, oh, okay, that's what it was supposed to
Right.
be. So making that, you know, that connection, bringing it into real life is, it is really, and it's powerful.
Yeah. And you talked about, kind of bringing the community in earlier, which is awesome because that's exactly, the goal of this project is like, you guys are in Loudoun County, I'm in Fairfax County, but, it all kind of encompasses the Northern Virginia or the DMV area and kind of looking for a way to, really allow creative voices to just have a space to speak. Because we talked about in our first meeting about how like you guys ended up winning best cover band when like you're not really a cover band, but like that's what it seems like people are looking for, but I don't think that's actually the case. People just want good music,
Right.
you
And that
know?
and that's a whole thing in itself about how we we want to see music professionals treated better. And
Mhm.
I don't mean like they're, absolutely horrifically, treated, but there are some serious horror stories out there that
Absolutely.
are just not okay. And it's really interesting because as my mom as a manager, her whole thing was, yeah, sure, you hired my band for an hour, but there was plenty more that went into preparing for this show and this performance that you don't see, that is
Mhm.
still warranted compensation for it. And um, I I just saw something online about, someone wrote, just because I can get it done in 30 minutes, it doesn't mean you only pay me for my 30 minutes.
Yes.
Um, because it took me years to be able to hone my craft in a way that I can get it done in 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
And the line that stuck out to me was, you're paying for the years, not the minutes.
Mhm.
And I just love that, in terms of, as a music professional, like, I am a professional, I get paid to do what I do. I have, systems in place for rehearsal and my warm-ups and how I write music and how I create a show and, stage setup. And there's just so much that goes into a performance that venues, and I would say even fans, don't know and
Yeah.
or acknowledge.
Mhm. Absolutely, because even for me starting out, I didn't know all that went into it, and then when you learn all that goes into it, when a venue is like, "Oh, I'm gonna pay you 60% of our earnings for that night," it's like, "Yeah, so technically I'm paying to play at your venue right now."
Exactly. And when and it's that light bulb that goes off, that you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just," or one of the other classics is, you have to sell tickets to your own show.
Mhm.
get paid. And I mean, yeah, great. I want my family and my friends and my fans to be there, but like I'm not your event planner. I'm not
Right.
like I'm not your promoter.
Absolutely.
And so really changing the conversations that people have about music is an important part of changing the culture around it, around performance.
Mhm. And I think that's the main thing that needs to change is whatever the culture that's there isn't set up to provide the best experience for either party, for the people who are going to see music and the people who are out there making it and performing it. And we need to be able to give musicians and artists places to where they can create their best work possible, so that when they're going out to venues, they're like, hey, this is my music, this is the videos to my past shows, giving those artists the capability and the power to say, like, I know all that goes into it, and I can't agree to get paid $100 tonight.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
takes more
And
than that.
right. And it's two-sided. So, you've got the audience and the venues, and then you've also got the individual artists themselves that have to be able to really value what they do and recognize, look, this is my contribution to society, and I deserve to be recognized for that. So I agree with you absolutely. I'm looking forward to how this experience with COVID and quarantining and how it's affected the music industry, all of the conversations that it's going to open up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think that artists are realizing now, like, like we said, the value and the power of their work, and now how much work is going on behind the scenes to make sure that, uh, you know, nobody wants to fade into irrelevancy. So they have to just, like, people have to make sure that they're doing all they can. And that's requiring purchasing live streaming equipment and buying, uh, like buying services for certain platforms. And so when, things open up, hopefully 2021, springtime, and bands are offering $500, they're like, no, I've been building a fan base over the past year. And
Exactly.
like,
Like you, I was stuck at home, but I wasn't just sitting on my butt. Like
right.
there were things I really made this. I committed to this, and I expect to be compensated for that commitment. So
Absolutely. And I think it's also going to play into everything with the better music and shows that we can bring to venues, that's going to bring more money to the venues. It
uh-huh.
only works out for everybody.
Right, right. You're absolutely right. We all ride the wave together. What is it? A rising tide lifts all boats.
Hmm. So yeah, we just really need to do the best we can. And I think that, you guys are doing it. And I'm doing my best to, like, try to bring attention to the people that are doing it, um and it's gonna pay off. I know it is. It has to. um so other than that, I feel like this is a great place. Like, I feel like, this project is exactly what we need to get. And, we're getting some eyes on it, and I think it's going to kind of just take the whole community realizing, like, we need to start lifting each other up more.
Mhm.
um and that was something uh I was talking to Waylon K. Smith. He's an artist in Baltimore. I was
Mhm.
talking to him on Sunday, and, you know, and I don't want to use the word selfishness as if it's a bad thing, because I think that there's a little bit of that required, especially for somebody who is a performer. Like,
Mhm.
it's in some ways you do like yourself enough to put yourself in front of a bunch of people,
And say,
um,
here I am.
right. But, like, even as artists, we also need to start going to people's shows,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
we need to start the wave of supporting other people, because, I fell into it myself, where being like, Yeah, I mean, like, I could go see my friend's show on Friday, but on Saturday morning, I have rehearsals, so, I can't really have a late night, so I'm just gonna skip
Yeah.
this one this time. And then you skip everyone,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then, when, then you see that, these original bands aren't getting people coming in
Right,
and
no
sitting in
track.
the
Yeah.
seats.
Mhm.
um, they just decide to bring a cover band because, like, oh, people aren't really listening to them anyway. So
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's not always support doesn't always have to be in the shows. It can be in the social aspect of things. It can be in the you know, if they share a link and say, please vote for me, vote for them.
right.
If I mean, and one of the things that I used to run into in that realm of thinking was that, like, well, I don't know that I like their music, or I don't know that I, it's not for me, so I don't have to.
Mhm.
But you just don't know. You could share someone's song, and someone else in you know, your connections does enjoy that, does want that,
Absolutely.
is looking for that. So you just never know, and the only thing that we can do is to just share it, to put it out there, and if it's meant to be, it will be. And that's the other thing about the muse. She knows what she's looking for.
Mhm.
uh,
Absolutely. Yeah. But man, this has been great, and I hope. Oh, I'm excited to hear more of your music. What I really like about your music is it's like, I can't think of another word other than like wholesome.
oh
Like, it's
wow,
just like, I don't know, it gives me good vibes. I love it. Like, it's just
that's the point. That was the whole point, and that is probably the highest compliment we could ever get for our music, is that
yeah.
it actually that was what it was meant to do. It was meant
Mhm.
to give people full hearts, and you know especially, and the thing is every one of those songs has a message, but specifically Unknown Soldier has a very distinct message. It was written for very specific people that we lost too soon, and we
Mhm.
just don't want that to happen again. So those are the kinds of things that we want to give to people, is the opportunity to say, I am I feel better now.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So it definitely does that, and I can't wait to put this out there and for people to, get a chance to listen to everything and watch where you guys are going next, and maybe even check out if they need a studio space to to record at, they can check you guys out. So
I used to be in love with the boy.